Okay, I gave you all a break, but that means you had to come back. So I hear a lot of people making a lot of noise outside the main room that need to come take a seat. I'm just saying. Okay, welcome back. Jonathan Saenz, good to see you again. We're gonna take a trip through Texas Values University, okay? You heard me earlier in the day. I talked about some of my tips, some of my insights on particular areas of advocacy, right? Positioning, what time to arrive, bring people, all kinds of good stuff, all right? Just barely scratched the surface. But the main thing I want you to know during my talk is we've put together an online 24/7 accessible resource, no matter where you are, called Texas Values University, all right? This is an online educational portal, taking a lot of stuff that we have learned over the years. For me, a couple of decades, okay? And here's one of the good things. It's not just me on the video and some of our training, right? We bring together some of the greatest, the experts from Texas, but also a little bit across the country, right? People that have the issues touched them or they've worked on it in different ways. They've been in the battlefield, so to speak, right? So when you think about you're gonna learn these topics, we try to bring the best to you, okay? Now, this is just the beginning. This is really a phase one for this online educational portal, right? We're just getting warmed up, so to speak, all right? We just completed this about 2 or 3 months ago. So if you think, oh, I wish you would cover this, or why didn't you guys cover that, all right? Send an email, leave us a note, put it on the comment card before you leave, and we'll take a look at that. But this is just phase one. But I want you to know, it took about 2 years just to get to this point. But that was the hard part. The websites, the vendors, making sure everything matched up and worked. We got all that figured out. Now we're in a position where I think we can focus on just adding more content and value to this product. Now, it is not a free resource. Some of the people that did a sponsorship for the event, it was included in their package, but it is not a free resource online. It is, I think it's $25 or $30. It's very reasonable. But we want to get a little bit of a commitment from you, right? So if you really want to do it, you pay, you're more likely to go through it, okay? But our tagline is graduate to an advanced level of citizenship, okay? And maybe you would agree with me that being a citizen, not only of Texas, but of the United States, it's at a different level, right? It's not like some other countries and other places, right? It's a little bit more sophisticated. You sort of have to want it a little bit more. You've got to participate a little bit more, but that's a good thing. In a lot of places in the world, it doesn't matter how much you wanted to participate, how strongly you prayed, how foundational some of your beliefs are. You have no rights, or you have limited ability to have access to the government or really to make the difference as one person. Okay, that's not the case in Texas or in America, but that does mean you've got to get off the couch. Well, actually not in this case, okay? You could learn Texas Values University for the comfort of your own couch. See how I did that? Somebody told me earlier I was kind of good at making those connections. Anyway, I'm just having some fun with y'all. But in order to really play out the full role of being a citizen in the United States, yeah, it takes a little bit more effort, right? You have to put a little bit more into it on your own, okay? But I want to try to break some of that down for you, make it a little bit easier so you feel like I don't know where to start, right? People come to our events all the time, they get involved in work, I don't really know what to do, or I don't know what my rights are, right? They have a lot of questions, they have a lot of insecurities and concerns, and rightly so. There are some government officials that are flat out ugly and hostile to citizens. They have completely lost their sense and awareness of what it means to be a public servant, okay? And I'm sorry for that. I wish people would not act that way and people wouldn't have gone through that experience. So I get it that sometimes, you know, there can be good reason for being in the place where you might be. Nonetheless, we want to help you get to a better place. And it's not just about us and our organization, right? We have, I think, 13 or 14 people that actually work for us officially. You know, that's not including our board and other dedicated volunteers. Anybody been to like every county in the state of Texas? Okay, there's a lot of space to cover, all right? This summer, I took my family to Palo Duro Canyon, which they say is like second place to the Grand Canyon. It's pretty close to as big. Anybody been to Palo Duro Canyon near Amarillo? It's beautiful, all right? But just from Austin, it was a long way to travel, okay? And I don't know, it was a lot of rain and stuff. Anyway, it took and we had the dog with us. Anybody else have a dog that you carry around? I don't know how I became a dog person. I've always liked dogs, don't get me wrong. But I was like, yeah, that's kind of fun that somebody else has them, you know, the kids, all that stuff. It's a lot to deal with, you know, their mess. Now you got a dog. I was like, I'm not doing all that, you know. Maybe later when they're adults, I don't know. So anyway, it's probably my daughter that got to me the most. We got a dog, this little mini doodle, golden doodle. His name is Red. That wasn't a political thing, just so you know. Not exactly, okay? He was kind of, I wish I had a picture of him. He was kind of red-ish when he was a puppy, like deep red. And he had a red collar around his neck because there was a bunch of different, you know, puppies, and they had a red collar to identify him. And so red collar, he kind of looked red. And, you know, I had just gotten back from the Republican National Convention. I was like, all right, we're going to name him Red. Anyway, we took the dog with us, which meant the trip took a lot longer. My point is, traveling around Texas, it's a lot of ground to cover. You think about the ability of our organization as a statewide organization to make an impact across the state. We can't do it by ourselves, okay? And we don't want to. So one of the ways we identified that we can increase our reach and empower other people is to take the tools and things we've learned, put it into your laptop, into your home, your smartphone, whatever. Give you those tools, right? I told you I drove to Odessa for a city council meeting. That took 6 hours. Sometimes issues happen, you gotta respond right away. I mean, by the time I get in my car, I know about it, somebody from our team, when we get to Odessa, the issue may be over. But also this, people in your community need to know there's someone there that's always watching, that's always holding them accountable, that has their ear to the ground, that's aware, right? But also, the more that you are involved, you're gonna have an impact. People are like, okay, that person's like me, and now I'm not alone. Next thing you know, you may have sort of changed or revolutionized your community, and now they're more pro-life or, you know, American values, whatever the case may be. All right, so this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to take a lot of the things we learn, make it more accessible, let you run with it, let us know if you need more help, and we think a lot of this stuff is extremely valuable. So let me tell you what's in there, all right? Let's start with religious liberty, okay? There's three main pillars and issues for our organization. Religious liberty, we probably spend the most on, all right? So I'm glad that I'm not teaching this by myself. I brought along some friends. As I mentioned earlier, Kelly Shackelford, one of the most well-respected First Amendment religious liberty attorneys in the country. Can we push play, or can we walk through the religious liberty part one? I think that's where we've got Kelly Shackelford. I just want you to see a little bit, and before we press play, this is how it works. Okay? You watch a video lecture, which is between 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 25 to 30 minutes. And they walk through, the lecturer walks through some different issues. And then there's a quiz. You got to pay attention, okay? There's also a list of notes, right? So you could read those too before you take the quiz, all right? You take the quiz, you get a test. I think if you get 80 or above, you get a pass certificate, and now you can go to the next course. But you know what? You can't go to the next course until you pass the first one, all right? We really want to put some scholastic value behind that. We don't want to just put that up there and, you know, you forward another video, it's like you're on YouTube. Try to put a little bit more intention behind it, all right? So you get a certificate when you pass. You can say, I passed Texas Values University, whatever. Okay, so, and this is good for all ages. All right, let's just watch a little bit of this video with Kelly Shackelford. And actually, I think this is the intro. There should be one where it's just Kelly. When we go to the next lesson, I think this is me and Kelly. There's one, here we go. Okay, because you've heard me speak enough. All right, here we go, Shackelford.
One of the biggest religious liberty cases really in the last maybe 70 years, really a sea-changing decision, is the case of Coach Kennedy. Kennedy versus Bremerton Schools. Coach Kennedy was a Marine for 20 years, got out, was offered a job to be a coach, and made a commitment to God at the very beginning that after every game, when people would, be milling around on the field, they'd be maybe making reservations on their phone for dinner, talking to friends, he made a commitment that the first thing that he would do is to go to a knee and thank God for the privilege of coaching those young men. And he went for 7 years. After every game, he'd go to the 50-yard line, he'd go to a knee, and he would do that. Until the school said, if you do that again, we're going to fire you. Well, he made a pledge to God, so he went to a knee, and they fired him. And 7 years of litigation later, we were at the U.S. Supreme Court and won a 6-3 victory in favor of Coach Kennedy, really, and every coach, every teacher in the country, that violates free speech, it violates his religious freedom, and it was a huge decision. Many people don't know this. There had never been a case before the Coach Kennedy case, never in the history of the country, over the rights of teachers or coaches in our schools with regard to their religious freedom. This was the first case, and it set a great precedent. And that's what most people know. What they don't understand is what happened within the decision. And that is, as I mentioned in the Van Orden versus Perry case that I talked about, there was a huge precedent that goes back to the 1970s called Lemon versus Kurtzman. Lemon tried to interpret our Establishment Clause, which the founders didn't want us to establish a national church. Lemon interpreted this in a broad way to say that anywhere government was, religion couldn't be, that would violate separation of church and state, which, of course, those words aren't in the Constitution. Normally, you can't bring a lawsuit if you're offended, but they say we're going to make an exception. If you're offended by religion, you can bring a lawsuit. So for most people in America's whole lives, what they've seen is nativity scenes coming down, menorahs coming down, around Christmas or Hanukkah, 10 Commandments being pushed into closets. If there's any sort of religious activity around a school, even if it doesn't involve any coercion, it's all of a sudden a problem. Why? Because any of these things are problematic under the Constitution? No, because of the Lemon case. Well, a few years earlier than the Coach Kennedy case, about 4 years, we were at the U.S. Supreme Court in a case called Bladensburg, American Legion versus the American Humanist Association. This is the Bladensburg Cross, the Peace Cross, that had been in Bladensburg, Maryland, right outside of D.C. for almost 100 years. It was put up by moms who lost their sons in World War I. And the American Humanists came along and said, you can't have this. It's on government property. This violates Lemon. And we went to the Supreme Court, and really for maybe one of the first times, we said it's time to get rid of Lemon. It's wrong. It's creating hostility to religion. The founders would be appalled. And we asked the Supreme Court to overturn that precedent. They ruled 7-2 that memorial should not be touched. But more importantly, 5-4, they said we're not following Lemon in this case. That was a crack in the armor. But when we got to the Coach Kennedy case, we were like, if we go for the ultimate reversal of Lemon, it's like going for a grand slam, and we might not win. And we can win this case with a bunt single, and it'll affect millions and millions of teachers and coaches. So we had the Lemon argument in our briefs, but we really didn't push it. Midway through the oral argument, really out of nowhere, Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch began to discuss that maybe it's time to get rid of Lemon. Well, we were in shock. Our eyes were big as silver dollars, just couldn't believe this discussion was going on. But we thought, they probably don't have the votes to do something, because this precedent, Lemon, has been around for 50 years. It's been cited over 7,000 times to push down religious freedom, and that's a big change. Well, I was sitting in our conference room with Coach Kennedy when the decision came down, and he said, did I win? Did I win? And we said, yes, shh, we're reading. And a few pages in, we read, Lemon is over, reversed, gone. Huge. This is a huge.
All right. So, you may think I'm smart. Maybe you don't. Kelly Shackelford, U.S. Supreme Court, they know their stuff. That's who you're gonna learn religious liberty from. Let's go to the material tabs right above Kelly's head. You click that tab, click the part under there that says lesson content. I think there's some notes in that section. Go under that. There we go. So you'll get this thing too, a written area. You kind of review it. You can have that written form. And then now let's go to the quiz. Go back a little bit. Quiz 2, I think, start quiz, right? Ask some questions. Why was Coach Kennedy fired? For leading a Bible study, requiring players to be baptized, asking players to memorialize the Lord's Prayer, or for kneeling to pray after each football game. Okay, you were paying attention. All right, click that. Next. Okay. Kennedy versus Bremerton, first time Supreme Court heard a case about religious freedom. The religious freedom of coaches and teachers. Let's click that one. Next. What was the effect of the ruling of Lemon v. Kurtzman? This was the old ruling. Prayer was banned in schools, anywhere where government religion could not be. Coach Kennedy got his job back. The Lemon law allowed cars to be returned within 7 days. Number 2, okay, anywhere where government was. Okay, let's go next. The Lemon v. Kurtzman precedent has been cited more than how many times? Were you paying attention? Y'all are good. All right, 7,000. I don't know, is that right? We'll see. Okay, how did the Supreme Court rule in the American Legion, American Humanist case? That was the Bladensburg Cross case. The Peace Cross should be taken down. Peace Cross should not be taken down. Should be taken down, must be repainted, a disclaimer. Number 1, okay, should not be taken down. Next, in what way was the American Legion case a crack in the armor against religious freedom? The justice cited Lemon v. Kurtzman to support their decision. They ruled 5-4 that Lemon case would not be followed. They determined crosses are exempt, or they ruled unanimously to keep the cross. Second? Okay, I don't know. I forget. Okay, go. Second one. Next. During the arguments in the Kennedy case, blank brought up the idea of overturning Lemon v. Kurtzman precedent. Coach Kennedy's legal team, the school's team, Justice Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, or a clerk. 3 or 1? Is it Kelly's team? They thought of it, but the justices. Okay, let's go with 3. Next. Because of the Lemon-Kurtzman precedent was removed from the Coach Kennedy day, which of the following is true now? Crosses that have been taken down could be put back up. Statue of the Texas Ten Commandments can be displayed. Students, teachers, and coaches and religious lights are protected, or all of the above. All the above. Next. As long as blank, you have the freedom to express your religion. As long as the government isn't coercing, you're on church property, you're outside city limits, the sponsoring organization doesn't receive taxpayer funds. Number 1, the government isn't coercing. Okay, it's a little tricky there. Okay, next. True or false? The founders wanted Americans to have full, vibrant freedom of religion. True or false? Raise your hand if you think true. Raise your hand if you think false. Okay, you need to leave. No, I'm kidding. That was there was nobody that raised their hand. I'm joking. All right, next. Results, how do we do? 100%. All right. You're smarter than any other student entering law school. I just want you to know with that. All right? All right. That's what it's like to go through just a little sliver of these programs. All right, let's go to another topic, because it's not just religious freedom, okay? Somebody you may have seen earlier. Let's go to the abortion industry, presented by Abby Johnson. Let's just watch the first couple of minutes of her video presentation. Model intro 1, Abby Johnson. Hey, Texas Values friends, Jonathan Saenz here, president of Texas Values. I'm here with my friend Abby Johnson, who needs no introduction, but I'm gonna say a couple of things about her anyway. What you're gonna learn in part 1 and part 2 of this teaching in this course is what you need to know about the abortion industry. But after you go through part 1 and part 2, you're probably gonna be thinking it could be called what the abortion industry doesn't want you to know about them. And there's really no one that knows this better, in my opinion, and probably the opinion of most, than Abby Johnson. You're gonna hear a little bit more about that, but you probably know she was a part of the abortion industry, left the abortion industry, and then has become one of the most notable and talked about pro-life leaders. Matter of fact, she's in this book, Honoring the Greatest Pro-Life Leaders of the Last 50 Years. You can get a copy of this if you want. Let me know. But Abby Johnson is in the book. I had the honor of writing an article about her. She is from Texas, in case you're not aware of that. And so really fits together nicely with what we're trying to do on this issue. Abby, thanks for taking time. I know there's a lot of things that you're involved in now that are so important. But part of what we're going to do, particularly in part 1, though, is tell some of that history. Mm-hmm. There's been a book written about your history. There's been a movie, but sometimes pulling out some key details, and that's what we're doing. There's a generation, you think about how long it's been now, right, since this started for you, but there's a generation coming up that they may be aware of you, but they're hungering for this information, and I think there'll be a lot of value here.
Yeah, I hope so. You know, I think about, I started at Planned Parenthood in 2001. It has been over 20 years since I started working there. And that feels like a lifetime ago. But, my oldest daughter wasn't born. Her friends. You're right. This is an entire generation that has been born since I started working at the clinic. And things have changed. Society has changed, right? We didn't have social media when I first went to work for Planned Parenthood.
I was my first year of law school, I think, when this journey, when you started at Planned Parenthood, and then I was somewhere out of it once you ended it.
So the world has changed. Yeah. The way that we view information has changed. And certainly the abortion.
A lot's happened since Abby Johnson got left Planned Parenthood, became pro-life. And a big part of that is when she left, she started telling the truth. So when you're gonna learn in this training, she's gonna tell you all the behind-the-scenes secrets that she learned when she was there and how she's using them for good. It's also gonna help you when you talk to people. They're gonna say things about the abortion issue that are not true. And you're gonna be able to learn how to counter that. And they're gonna like, well, where'd you hear that from? Well, Abby Johnson, because she was a former Planned Parenthood director. That's where I learned that from, right? So I remember I was giving a speech on a college campus one time when I was a law student, and I remember, I guess, a well-meaning, spirited young lady came up to me, and there was ropes around us and all this kind of stuff, but she was kind of close, and she kind of got close to my face, and she was like, you shouldn't be talking about this issue. You have no place. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, you're a man. You don't have a place in this, you can't get pregnant. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. And I said, that was like 15 years ago. Now they would say men can get pregnant, right? Anyway, so I said, okay, so no men, not one man should be able to have an opinion or a place in this discussion. That's right. I said, okay, so there's not any man that's been involved in this conversation that should be able to have a decision about the outcome. That's incredibly, yes, that's it. That's 100% correct. And I said, are you aware of the sex of the Supreme Court justices that decided Roe versus Wade? And she was like, I said, they were all men. Well, that's different. Oh, I get it, that's different. Okay, whatever. Right, the easy answer when you've been caught or whatever, that's different, right? She had never heard that before because she didn't know the background, the history, right? Her argument, done. Fell apart, destroyed in that little exchange. Now, I wasn't trying to humiliate her, but I was trying to make a point, right? She didn't know what she was talking about. She had a very weak argument. I just allowed her to see the light, okay? All right, we go into this module, though, same thing. There's a quiz. There's a printable, 1 or 2 pages of information Abby's gonna talk about. The early days for Abby, the seeds of doubt, when she found out exactly what was happening in Planned Parenthood and how she could not live with it and how destructive it was. Then what she went on to do with advocacy, pro-life legislation, and so on, okay? You got just a little bit of that today. This is like 2 or 3 hours of content, and then you're gonna get printable information. All right, let's go to Save Women's Sports. Let me see what's on one. Pull that video up. Okay, let's just play a couple minutes of that. Start.
My name is Riley Gaines. I am a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, actually the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time. 2-time Olympic trial qualifier, SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year, SEC Community Service Leader of the Year. The list goes on, but really all of that to say it's a lifelong journey to compete and succeed at the highest level. I ended up going to the University of Kentucky, where I was a swimmer, but I started swimming when I was 4. Dedicated really 18 years of my life to my sport. Of course, that includes sacrifice, that includes the grueling practices, all of the things that come along with, again, being an elite level athlete. But I was willing to do those things because I knew I had to. But I get to college, did great things in my career, but my senior year, I was not prepared for what the NCAA subjected us to, which was competing against a man. This was a man from University of Pennsylvania who swam 3 years on the men's team there before ultimately deciding to switch to the women's team, all for merely saying he felt like a woman. He went from being ranked in the 500s, 400s nationally, to then dominating the entire country of women. Myself and my teammates and my coaches and my parents, my family, we all saw the unfairness in this. We saw the harm that was being had to women's sports, to me personally, to my teammates, to my other competitors. But the NCAA didn't see a problem with it. And so my senior year, in March of 2022 at our national championships, they announced that Thomas would be allowed to participate with us as women in the women's division. I watched as he swam to a national title, beating out Olympians, beating out American record holders. I mean, really some of the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers this world has ever seen. And he beat them all by body lengths. He and I raced actually in the 200 freestyle. Which
Abby's gonna tell a little bit more of her story, and then she's gonna go on to tell about how she transferred that into activism. But she's gonna talk about some things that very few people can talk about. What happened behind the scenes, what happened when she started getting involved, right? The impact that she has been able to make as a young lady and the power of the truth and knowing these issues, knowing the law side, knowing the common sense and how to make smart arguments on this issue. Same thing here, printed materials, quiz, all right? Let's go to part 2 of my expert comments and so on from what we started from earlier, all right? There are 6 courses currently on this program, just so you know. All right, so we're gonna go back to, I guess towards the bottom, citizen advocacy, expert and insider insights into effectiveness. Let's go to part 2. And I think we're almost out of time. Let's play the 30-second, let's go to part 2. Is that where we are? Yeah, just play like the first 30, 45 seconds of this clip. Let's see where we go.
Welcome back to this course, Keys to Texas Legislative Advocacy. This is part 2. Hope you learned a lot in part 1. You know, I learn things every year at the Texas Capitol. As a matter of fact, I was meeting with our team earlier and going over some things that I've learned over the years, and it made me think of some things that maybe I hadn't learned yet, or things that I recently learned that maybe I thought I knew before, or things that I've picked up along the way. You know, there can be so much value in being in the Capitol and walking around. right? And a lot of this advocacy is focused on what happens at the Texas Capitol during the Texas legislative session or special sessions, but it can be applied in other settings too, where you have a government body, you have a group of people, maybe an HOA, or any circumstances where somebody else is making a decision.
Oh, keep going. No, you're good. I was going to tell you, keep going a little bit further.
You have to participate in that process or make a presentation. So just keep that in mind. So a lot of value in what you're learning, and certainly on part 2 as we continue this conversation and this training as a part of Texas Values University. Now, in part 1, we started off by talking about government belongs to those who show up. So showing up at the Texas Capitol, you could literally walk around and allow yourself to think of things. What could I be doing? Who could I talk to? So much of the work is just running into people. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this training, like the key places to be. And you're going to see on the screen some pictures of those places in the Texas Capitol. I don't know, maybe with some red arrows or some ways to point you to where those actually are in the Texas Capitol. But I've learned that over years, right? I mean, positioning, sort of being in the right place, the right time, oftentimes it's not by accident in the work we do, it's by design. But it's as a result of things I've learned over the years, noticing, when I was in this part of the Capitol, I ran into this person more, or I saw more elected officials.
As you get further into these videos, we will show you the places in the Capitol. We will literally take red arrows and say, you need to be here. But you need to be there. At this time, you need to walk here. You need to be over there. We're going to give specific examples. It's not just me and a tie up there talking. As you walk through the video, you'll see that. We will diagram parts of the Capitol and tell you, this is the time of year, this is when it's in committee, this is when it's not, all those different things, right? And I'm telling you, you're going to learn, you're going to know more than probably 95% of the people that go to the Capitol. Because you know how much training I got before I got to the Capitol? And if Kelly Shackelford's watching this, don't take this the wrong way, okay? Because he had a lot of confidence in me. 0. Kelly was like, go down there, you'll figure it out, okay? And you can figure a lot of things out by trial and error, okay? But my point is, the most times there's not a lot of that training and you don't see a lot of it. And sometimes, I think lobbyists don't tell other people because it's sort of a trade secret, right? They're like, people are getting paid. They don't want to know people to know all the, the tricks and rules because they might work them out of a job. Anyway, I'm not about that. So, tremendous value in Texas Values University, right? I promise you, you will graduate to an advanced level of citizenship. But I do want to tell you, this is phase 1. We want to do phase 2, 3, 4. We want a student track where our teaching and our education and our quizzing and all that focuses more on the young people. We want more of the people that want to be more sophisticated, the citizen activists. They're a part of a group or organization. They want to actually pass bills. They want to get a little bit more involved, sort of the expert track. Okay, maybe you want to run for office. We're going to explore those topics. How to run for office. What are some of the skills and the talents and the strategies that you want to put together, right? And maybe you want to do this as a career, right? There's a lot of different ways we're going to go with this, but I want you to get started with this, right? As we start our grassroots program, Texas Defenders, we take some of these new steps. I want you right there along with us because we're going to need you. Now, thankfully, we got some great leadership in our state, but you can't take that for granted, okay? You can't think it's just always going to be there and you can go back home and rest assured that Texas is as blessed as it's ever been, all right? Everyone's got to do a part, and we're going to need people to continue to step up. So what do you think? You think there might be some value in this program? Anybody interested? All right. Sure, go ahead, Denise. It does. It absolutely does. That is not on my expert one. That's the other one that's like Texas Legislative 101, Legislative Advocacy 101 and 102. That's mainly worked with, and it takes you through there with Jonathan Covey and Mary Elizabeth Castle. Yeah, so we're going to go through the website. Absolutely. So, all right, I'm running out of time for this panel.